reduction, vowel reduction, is about the minimum the speaker can do to maintain a syllable, so that the hearer can actually hear a syllable, but the minimum they can do to enable that to happen. So English, as you know, is a result of a Germanic language being thrust together with a Romance language when the French invaded us in 1066, and for 300 years this sort of sandpapery, they ended up with English in about 1450 or whatever it was, people all started speaking English. And they ended up with a German pronunciation system, a Germanic pronunciation system, but lots of French words. And what they decided to do, or somehow what the language decided to do, was respect the number of syllables in the word. So when you see a letter which is associated with a vowel, that does mean there's going to be a syllable there, but unlike most other languages, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a real vowel in that position. You're just going to get the syllable maintained. And in fact, interestingly, when we spell English, where we actually get rid of syllables, we do put an apostrophe in to indicate to the reader. So I am, which is 2 syllables, when it gets pushed together into I'm, we actually put the apostrophe in there to indicate that the 2 syllables has become 1. But in other words, in all the other words, we maintain the number of syllables, but because it would be so exhausting to speak with all these pulses on every syllable, we have to recover at some point in English, and particularly actually children genuinely have to have some chance to recover. They're using all this effort to make stressed syllables. On the unstressed syllables, we allow them to recover by making minimal effort, but they have to maintain a syllable in there. So the question is, what can you do with yourself to keep a syllable, but put in the minimum possible effort? And again, it was Catford who came up with the most insightful analysis of this. And he pointed out there are basically 2 situations. One is where you have a syllable which is flanked on either side by consonants. So you've got a consonant, you've then got the vowel part, or what would be the vowel part, and then immediately afterwards you have another consonant. And he pointed out that where you have consonants and you have to move from one consonant to another, 2 things can happen in English. One thing is, if we're talking about not having a syllable, 2 consonants when they're next to each other can overlap. So if we take the examples of backyard and train, the k-y and the t-r actually overlap in their articulation. And as a result, you don't hear a syllable between them. But when you finish the first consonant and then start the second consonant, so you don't have an overlapping articulation, you just finish the first one, you then don't have to do anything else in order for the person to perceive there being a syllable in there. You don't have to put a schwa in or make some kind of vowel sound. All you have to do is finish the first consonant. So if I say go backyard or terrain, all I'm doing with terrain is just saying rain. I'm just finishing the t and then saying rain. Thank you very much. And this is something our students can do. Now it becomes clear, one can explain this to students. A nice thing is to put in dots rather than putting schwas in, which indicate you've got a sound there. If you just put a dot in, as I've got here, it indicates that all that's happening is the T has to be finished, or the K has to be finished before you actually say yard or rain. However, there's another very nice way into this from a teaching point of view, which is that if you have something like 10 to 2, where you've got the same consonant, or a homorganic consonant, like tonight, where you get the t and the n following one after another. In every language, as far as we're aware, in every language, people stutter. And if you go to train, the stuttering is effectively what you have to do in order to produce open transitions in English. So it's very nice, you can go to train, or 10 to 2, and if you just do one of them, you've got 10 to 2, and it's absolutely authentic English. That's all they have to do. They just have to learn to do what they do when they're stuttering, but that they have to learn that this is a part of English, this is the way in which you can produce English authentically and economically. And you can have 10 to 2, or tonight, or any other examples like this. So this was the first of Catford's analysis. He also said sometimes, of course, we want to maintain a syllable and there isn't a consonant immediately afterwards. And in that case, you'll have the word coming before a pause, for example, and in that case, we just do the minimum with that consonant in order that the person, the listener, can actually hear that it's a separate consonant. So butter, we're not really putting a full vowel after the t of butter. We're just making a little sound there, which means that people hear it not as but as butter. So those are the 2 ways, those are the only 2 situations basically which can occur. Either there is a consonant after the weak syllable or there isn't, and in both cases all we're doing as speakers is the minimum in order to establish that there is a syllable, so the listener can hear there is a separate syllable. Okay, so let's go back to my diagram. What I'm worst at is doing conclusions. So I actually have to write out my conclusions, otherwise I forget what my conclusions are. So this is where the slides are going to get a little bit wordy. First of all, what we've been talking about is reduction. So at the top of the left-hand side, reduction. What we need to understand as teachers is that it's best seen as an open transition. Stuttering is a very good way into it, and this is about the minimum sound energy needed to create a syllable. That's at the root of what we have to do in order to authentically produce reduced syllables in English. Stress is about the respiratory system, and accent at the bottom is the thing which controls intonation. And one nice thing you can now see in this diagram is that you've got three distinct levels. In terms of what we do with ourselves, everything down the right-hand side, all these levels of prominence are just playing English, playing with and exploiting either what we can do with our tongues and our mouths, or what we can do with our vocal folds, or what we can do with our respiratory systems. And if we give our students the right actions to do at each level, then by mixing and matching these different things, they can get authentic ways of producing English syllables with 5 different levels of prominence, be it reduced syllables, stressed syllables, unstressed syllables, or whatever. Hopefully, what's the result of this going to be? What we want out of this whole process is that students have a healthy and authentic way of speaking English. I've taught pronunciation, I've seen people come to me who've learned pronunciation, and the pronunciation somehow is such an effort. They're working so hard, it's so unhealthy what they're doing with themselves. It's really quite distressing as a teacher to come across that. We have to find, and the reason I think this is happening is because the people, again, have been taught in a listen and repeat model, they've found ways of copying the sounds, but the way they're doing it is just not healthy or authentic. And as a result, it's a horrible experience to watch them, interact with them. It just feels painful. One vicariously feels the pain involved there. So we want healthy and authentic ways for people to speak, grounded in physical activity so that they can carry it out in the classroom. And they can do the practice themselves outside the classroom. They know what they have to do to sound English. It's not just that they're copying a model in the classroom. And then down at the bottom, don't teach by listen and repeat is the take-home story. Teach stress as pulsatile speech breathing, and teach vowel reduction as a form of articulation. Now, I said I'd put my email address up. The other thing I'm going to put up is a couple of pictures. We do produce materials of pronunciation science, and they're terrifically attractive, and they capture a lot of the things which I've been talking about, and do always talk to us about some words afterwards if you're interested. Good, thank you very much.